to notice. You're always the first one.
Hey Blue, we are the Baseball Umpires podcast for umpires by an umpire. We are more than just balls and strikes and outs and saves. Listen in for tips, rule interpretations, equipment and attire reviews, interviews with umpires of all levels, and some funny stories that might come up every time out on the baseball field. If you're new to the field as an umpire or a seasoned vet in the world of umpiring, then this is the podcast for you. Hey Blue, the Umpire Podcast is part of the 1420 Sports Bar group of podcasts on the Belly Up Network. All right, the Hey Blue Umpires Podcast for umpires by an umpire. Today's show is brought to you by Manscaped and Manscaped.com. Use promo code 1420SCAPED at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. Their men's personal grooming needs for those razors and shavers, and keep that beard off your face as you go out there. Clean shaven face or happy faces on the ball field. That's my motto anyways as we get out there. I haven't done one of these Hey Blue podcasts for quite some time. Been quite busy on the field and off the field with everything that's going on with this Umpire Association, doing games and just trying to keep things going here at 1420 World Headquarters. But I didn't have a game last night. They got smoked out. For those of you who don't know, we're going through some horrific wildfires here in Alberta that just seem to be engulfing the province. It hasn't rained or anything for quite some time, and there's lots of smoke and everything else, and the air quality wasn't good. So yesterday a bunch of games got canceled throughout southern Alberta, so there was no game. So I did a little bit of show prep, had some time to myself, got to actually watch a ball game last night. Maybe we'll talk about the Yankees-Jays thing. That's a bit of a debacle, and there's rules you should follow and there's rules you shouldn't follow as an umpire and things that are going on. But that last entertained to finally sit down and watch a game, maybe take a night off isn't always the worst thing either. Sometimes we do a few too many games, your body takes a bit of a beating, especially when you get to the age of when you're closer to 50 than you are 40. Things start to change a little bit. But enough about me. Let's get into the Hey Blue podcast. Always happy to talk about umpiring and everything else, the way things are going. So far, the season's been going pretty well for us here in southern Alberta, and hopefully they're going great for everybody around North America. We're all guaranteed. We're all well underway, obviously, in the baseball season throughout North America and the like. And I'm sure we're all in mid-season form. There's nothing to worry about for the remainder of the season. Everything's going to be all peachy keen, jelly bean. There's nothing nothing we haven't seen before that we haven't seen, we won't see again. But let me tell you something. You're going to see something a lot different. You're going to see something that surprised you. We saw something on Sunday in a game we did with a three-man. We're just getting some practice out there for the upcoming WCBL season and the College World Series, the Canadian College World Series that's happening in southern Alberta this coming weekend. But we were on the field. We'll get into that a little bit later. But there's something I've never seen before in all my years around baseball and all my years of umpiring. So it's something that we'll talk about. It's a bit scary, and I want to get people's thoughts about what's going on. But anyways, there's a lot that's going to happen throughout the ball season as it progresses. And we're getting into games that matter a lot. We're getting into games that mean a lot more to most. It's a different feeling for umpires and for players in general, because most of the games that we tend to do in the fall and in the early spring, when teams are just getting together and getting the feelers out and they're playing uncompetitive games. It's fall ball, they say. And then you get into winter months where you're not doing a whole bunch, and then you get into the spring games where there's tryout games, and then there's like some high school games that aren't the most competitive, and there's just games for teams to get their reps in. But now that you're getting into playoff type situations, you're getting into different league situations, you're getting into highly competitive games, no matter what level, whether you're at a 10U game or into into college baseball, which is going on right now. You see a lot more competitive spirits, not only from the players and the coaches, but the parents as well. And those are the ones sometimes you got to be a little bit more aware of. And there's a lot of things that can happen throughout there. And if some games have a lot more fans, there's a lot more eyeballs and earballs on you as you're on the field doing a lot of these games now. A lot more eyes are watching you to make sure that you're doing your job properly. Because I've mentioned before on these Hey Blue podcasts and to our, when we're doing our clinics throughout the winter months, and when you're doing some evaluating, you're doing some mentoring throughout the season, we're the only ones who are really getting paid for our services. Yes, coaches get paid. We won't talk about that. But in general, umpires are the only ones who are getting reimbursed for their time when we're out in the field. So it's very important that we go out there and give it our all 100%. It's very important that we don't let complacency get in at this point of the season, yes, some guys have done 30, some guys have done 40, some guys might have done 100 games at this point, and you got a lot more baseball that's going to happen throughout the summer months as we get closer to that part of the year. And a complacency can set in because you do so many games and you're around the ballpark so much and you're around the same people so much and you work with the same guys so often that you tend to get for lack of a better term, a little bit lazy, and a lot of things can happen throughout a baseball game and throughout the season, throughout the summer, that the complacency and your mind can wander a little bit, and you start thinking about other things other than umpiring or being on the field. There's a lot of external forces that can happen, but it's very important that when you're out on the field that you are giving it your all 100% of the time, and you're always in the game and you're always doing your job, because it's very the kids are out there, they're giving it their all, and their parents are paying good money. A lot of parents are paying a lot of money for their kids to play baseball, so the parents expect a higher level of excellence almost from us than they do from the kids themselves, and the coaches as well feel that same way. And it's very important as an umpire to go out with the same level of consistency and the same hustle and the same work ethic, because things can come up this time of year that you haven't seen before, and something can always come up that you didn't practice, or laziness can happen on the field. And it's very important that every pitch matters to you as much as it matters to the kid throwing that baseball, and every at bat matters as much to you as it does to the kid hitting that baseball. And when I say kids, because I'm like I said, I'm closer to 50 than I am 20, so I can call all these athletes kids now. It's very important that you go out there and you're giving it your all, and you have consistency, and you're working hard at every chance that you get when you're on the field, because you only get the one chance to make a first impression, right? And when you're having a bit of a tough game out there, people understand that. They will get that you're having a tough game, or you boot a call here and there. They get that. But when it becomes a problem and it becomes a habit, there's a situation out there where you have to take a step back, and you're having a bad game, and you need to find a way to alleviate those issues between your ears and get back in the game, because that's your job for that 2-hour time span, for that hour and a half time span, or that 3-hour time span, where you need to be out there as an umpire doing what you can do every pitch you get. I'm not saying we're all going to be perfect. We're not going to make bad calls. That's going to happen no matter what. You're going to kick one, you're going to boot one, you're going to miss a pitch. That's just the way it is. A few weeks back, I had not one of my best plate games of the CCBC season. There was a extenuating circumstance between my ears. It's a game I probably shouldn't have taken on, but I did, and I kind of regret doing it. It kind of ruined my night. I didn't have the most fun. I was in bed early that night because I was thinking about it so much, and it was just one of those games I probably should have said, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have scheduled this game. It was on the anniversary of my father's death, and I probably should. You know what, I'm not going to be right between the ears. That's all I could think of was, so like 3 years later, I was doing a game and on. So maybe one of those things I shouldn't have done the game, because it took away some at bats from some kids. It took away definitely one at bat from a kid that I kind of regret, and I apologize to him right after, because of course he was the catcher, right? So I apologized to him. I say, hey man, I missed that pitch, and he goes, yeah, I get it, no big deal. You'll get another one to get. And he was very okay with me with the whole thing. Like, even the coach from Lethbridge, he came up to me. He said, something's not right with you today, and I didn't want to talk about it on the field, but the truth be told is I probably shouldn't have taken that game on. And there's things that go between your ears, no matter what it may be. Life does get in the way sometimes, and baseball isn't the end all and beat all. But when you take on an assignment, you need to go out there and make sure you're at your best, and forget you can't have any bad habits out there. You can't have a lack of hustle. You can't have a lack of preparedness when you go out there, because every pitch means something to somebody, and every game means something to somebody. And that's very important, to go out there and give it your all, and make sure you're being as professional as you can be, because it's a tough. Umpiring can be tough, but umpiring can be very easy as long as you have a preparedness out there and you're on the same wavelength as your partner or partners, depending on how many guys you're out there, guys or girls, for those females and women who umpire baseball out there as well. It's so important to be prepared and make sure you have a consistency and your game management, and how you can control the game on a night in, night out basis, day in, day out basis. And you need to have consistency on how you do things, because for some reason coaches have a very long memory, and they do things a certain way, and they remember everything. I'm not exactly sure why they remember everything. It's not like I'm going to change a call just because I got something wrong 2 months earlier, and they're going to remember that one. They're going to say, remember that call? And say, no, I don't remember that call. I don't remember that at all. What the umpires do, they don't remember many of the good calls they make, but you remember those bad ones you make, and there's no getting around that. But I don't know why coaches have this memory, and they bring that stuff up, and it doesn't do anybody any good at any time to bring up the past. And never helps anybody, because for every coach that brings up a bad call, you could probably bring up 30 good calls you make, and they won't remember those ones, because they'll say, well, that's your job, is to make good calls. So it's kind of a funny thing when coaches bring these things up, and parents bring these things up, and players bring these things up. Here's pro tip number one, everybody, to all the umpires listening out there to the Hey Blue podcast. Coaches and players aren't your friends. They're not your enemies, but they're not your friends. So you got to have a very short memory when it comes to how these guys treat you. They will be pleased as punch. They'll be sweeter than a candy cane and everything else when the things are going right. But the second that something goes wrong, they will be the first to yell at you. They'll be first to give you a little bit of grief. So like I said, pro tip number one from the Hey Blue podcast for the 17th day of May is coaches and players and parents aren't your friends. They aren't your enemies, but they're not your friends. So make sure you write that one down. That's very important advice, because you get to be doing so many games in your community and around the region, wherever you may be, whether you're in South Carolina, North Carolina. I have no idea why I picked those two states, but I did. Or in Alberta or BC or Ontario, Montana State, or wherever it may be. You do so many games, and you're around the same group of people throughout the season a lot. Sometimes they maybe expect a call here or there, and you can't have that, because the visiting team has just as much of a right to a good game as the home team that's paying you has the right to a good game. So it's very important to have a consistency in your game management, a consistency on how you call things, a consistency throughout the season from game one right through game 162. I just picked a major league number of games, but how many games you do throughout the year. It's very important to have the consistency and call the game the right way, and work hard every game, because that game means something to somebody. The outcomes of the games, and I talk about this a lot with the umpires that I work with, the problem that you got with a lot of these teams and a lot of these games, like I said earlier, is that the outcome of the game doesn't matter. It's more of the compete level and getting games in and getting reps in. But the thing is, you have to go out there and get in the habit of calling good games and making sure that when your beginning of season form and your mid-season form and your end of season form are all basically the same. Yes, you will get better the more games you do. There's no doubt about that. But your work ethic will not get better or worse. You have to keep that consistent. You have to be out in the field, giving it your all, doing the same thing over and over, and making sure you're consistent. Not only does that help you, it helps your partner. When you're guessing where your partner might be going on a first and third, and you look over your shoulder and he's not over there, that's the problem. When you have a guy supposed to be covering third base and he's not there, there's a problem. When there's a guy going to the line and you're not, and the umpire isn't running around to second base to take the runner on a two-man system, that's a problem. So there's got to be a consistency and a conversation that you got to have with your partners before you get in the field, and that will translate into success on the field. And the success off the field all starts with with your little conversation. No matter if you work with your partner before, or you've never seen this guy or girl before, you need to have a conversation, whether it be a long one or a short one. There has to be a conversation of what you're going to do on the field for that game. There has to be a level of concern in your voice when you have these conversations, and don't just brush things off, because everybody does things a little bit different. You go from town to town, city to city, state to state, province to province. There are little twerks and tweaks that everybody does a little bit differently. In general, things are basically the same, but there are little things that can come back to haunt you. Just the other day, I was out in the field with a guy, Dan. I'll say his name, Dan Griffith. We were having we're doing a American Legion A tournament kind of deal here in Lethbridge, and there was a slow roller that went right down the line, and it just curled around the bases. He was on the bases, I was on the plate, nobody on, and the ball just missed first base, and he made the call, and it's something that he came to me afterwards, goes, I know that's not my call, and I said, well, actually, there's something that we've been discussing as an advanced mechanic, is take something to the cutout instead of taking it to the base, right? Because it was to base and past base, umpire in law, everybody who knows that drill. But I said, no, Dan, that's something that we should have discussed prior to the game starting, and that's on me being the senior guy here. That's something that I should discuss with you prior to the game. But because of the other guys that I work with a lot, we just take things to the cutout, and we know what each other do. But with Dan, I haven't worked a lot of games with him, so it was something that I should have brought up and with him in a pregame meeting instead of talking about God knows what we were talking about before the game. It's just little things like that can bring success to the game, and two things that you do on the field that can make you very highly successful. And a little play like that could cost a game. And it was like the fourth inning that it happened. It was a blowout game, but it's something that could help you later on in a tight game where that call could make or break a season for somebody. And like I said, this time of year where you got playoffs happening, everything else in certain divisions, certain high schools, certain colleges, like that simple call could ruin a season for somebody. And by us not having the coverage down pat prior to the game, that could have come back to haunt somebody. Most of the time, it doesn't. Most of the time, the game will take care of itself, and the old ball don't lie saying can come into effect. But you know what? Sometimes the ball don't lie, and that's why we have officials, and that's why we have umpires, and that's why they get us out on the field to do these games. That's why we're getting paid the money that we do to be as professional as we can. So it's very important to have these conversations and to not think things that are going to be second nature as you're on the field, because sometimes things aren't second nature to anybody. And to have these conversations prior to the game starting is so important. And every once in a while during the game, like I'm not a big guy between innings talking to my partner a whole bunch unless it's necessary. But in general, I like to just keep the peace, because I've always found that when you have guys talking between innings, it puts a bit of a doubt in the coaches' minds on the base pass and everything else, that when you're having those conversations, usually it's just about what kind of sunflower seeds you have left, or if you have any sunflower seeds left at all. It's that conversation that happens. So it's very important to have those conversations after the game. And it's something that Dan did as well. And I'm not picking on Dan at all, but it was very good. After the game, he came in the room, and we were about to have a little conversation. What went right, what went wrong, and a couple of guys who were eager to get on the field for the next game. Dan said, "Hey, can you guys just give us 2 minutes after the game?" Like they were eager to get dressed and get ready, but they had some time. But after, like, Dan wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with myself to say, okay, what did we do right, what did we do wrong, and how did it all come about? And it was a very enlightening conversation that we had. It took 2 to 3 minutes, and it's something I think that everybody has to have. I think we talked about one of these Hey Blues before, but the post-game conversation is almost as important as the pre-game conversation, because that's where the mistakes can get pushed out, and you get it in your head right off the bat. Whether you keep it in a journal or whether you can keep it between your ears, that's something that can help you later on as the season progresses, because it's something you go, okay, that makes sense. Because when you talk about it on the field, the next pitch might happen. You might forget about that thing that just happened. So it's those conversations post game that mean a lot. And for Dan to say, "Hey guys, you get out of here give us 2 minutes so we can talk about what happened," it's very important. And I think that's something that's got to happen throughout the leagues that I do, that maybe give guys a little bit of time after the game. And you don't want a guy coming in who's got I'm guilty of it too, have a belly full of beer coming in talking about the game that you just umpired and everything else. Maybe just stay out of the umpire's room for 15, 20 minutes after the game and let them have a BS and have a beer and let them decompress as well is something that can be very important. Having those pre-game meetings is so important, because the complacency can get set in. And the thing about the pre-game meeting as well, it gets you into game mode a little bit, and you're not walking onto the field blind, I guess, or unprepared. A pregame meeting can be something you talk about the coaches, that might be able to talk about some troubles that you might have had with this team, with that team. You might some tendencies of some pitchers that might be going that day. There's so many conversations that can be had in a 3-4 minute span before the game, that can help your game so much, and it can get you ready to go for your game and your game day experience, and make it more pleasurable for yourself to go out there. I'll never understand how guys can run into a field, like, I know life gets in the way, and traffic and work and jobs and kids and things, and you run on the field, and you've only been there for 5 minutes, and you're tucking your shirt into your pants as you're running on the field. I've never understood that. It's very important to get there at least half an hour before the game. I know sometimes you can't, but it's important to be there half an hour before the game to discuss what you're doing and how you're going about it. Another thing that I'm going to strongly recommend to all our loyal listeners out there is being consistent with your game management. And by that, I'm talking about, and I hate to bring this up, and because I'm going to get yelled at and screamed at on all the Facebook pages and everything else, but being consistent with box and calling box and game management and different levels. Like I know the rule book's all the same, and I get that 100%. But there's different levels of box compared to box at the major league level, right? Like, you're not going to call it, if you started calling box on every pitch and everything else, you'd never get the games in. But being consistent with your game management at every level that you do, like if you're doing a U13 game or 13U or whatever it's called, I get them mixed up to this day. So for those people who don't know me or who don't understand, I don't understand what all the different levels are. I just go out there and umpire the game, and I worry about the rest of it afterwards. But being consistent at the levels that you're doing with bot calls, it means so much to the pitcher, to the coaches, to everything else. You can't let something go in the first inning and then call it in the seventh or the ninth inning. You can't let something go because, well, it's early in the season. You can't say, well, it doesn't really matter. If it doesn't matter in the first inning, don't call it in the ninth inning, because that's when a game can really change. So it's very important for your game management management to include that thought process in your head. Obviously, there's different levels. If you started calling balks at the, like I said, the U13 level and have a balk fest, no one's going to have any fun. And if you have a coach that's yelling for balks, maybe you can have a conversation with said coach at the lower level. Say, listen, man, your guys doing the same thing. So here's what I see. Here's how I call it. Here's what I do. I think if you're honest with the coach and with the players and tell them under your breath, say, hey man, your shoulders are turning. Hey man, give us a pause, and little things like that mid game. It'll do a lot more. You might be a more teachable sets. I know we're not coaches as umpires, but it might be a more teachable situation you have out there with the kids to they'll appreciate that more than just screaming balk and calling time and screaming balk and runners advancing all game long, because nobody has fun with that. And if a coach is calling for a balk all game long, there's a good chance said coach probably wasn't winning that baseball game anyways, right? So if they're begging for balks, there's a certain thing. There's conversations to have, and game management is very important when it comes to that kind of stuff, and keeping that very consistent at all levels you do. Like the WCBL season starts next Friday, I think it is, because we're doing this on the 17th, so it's on the 30th, I guess. Math's not my strong suit right now this time of year. On the 26th it starts, the 26th. So being consistent from day one of when that league's starting. It's a competitive league. It's a very good league, and a lot of college kids come up from the United States to play here in Canada, and they have a certain level, and they're usually pretty good. But there is the odd kid that he forgets to stop and everything else. But being consistent with your calls and game management at that level is very important at all levels. There's rules that you call. There's rules that you don't call. I'm not for 1 second saying don't call the rule, the game by the rule book. But what I'm saying is that there's certain rules for certain situations, and there's certain things you can let go at lower levels, or else games will never get done. And being consistent with your strike zone at every level. Don't strike in the second has to be a strike in the ninth, and vice versa. So game management at this point in the season and being consistent at this point in the season is very important. Also, one thing I want to get at here before we get going on here on the Hey Blue podcast, getting these out there, is one thing that I've been doing a lot lately, and it's very, very important. Another guy, he came out earlier, so we'll get that in half a second. But go to a game now and then, if you have time in your busy schedules. I know we have a shortage of umpires around North America, so just going to a game isn't really an option. But going to a game and just watching a couple of guys, whether it be young guys, old guys, and being a mentor and helping out and just watching a game, maybe not being a mentor so much, but just watching a game and get it in your head about where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do and how you would handle a situation and how you would have done things maybe differently or the same, and learning something and just watching an umpire do a game. I think it's highly invaluable to go out there and do that, and just getting the flow of things, because everybody has these, like I said, the different little tendencies and how to do things and different things you can see. And then maybe after the game, maybe go and ask the umpires to say, okay, you saw this, how did you go about doing this? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Don't criticize, but just ask questions. Nobody does things 100% perfect. Nobody does things like it's not my way or the highway, although we like to talk that way sometimes. But there's times where sometimes just you learn a lot by just watching and listening. And being an umpire, sometimes you just watching and listening to a game and seeing how different guys do things can be so important, and it can help you so much. And even maybe every once in a while going out and doing a game at a lower level that you maybe wouldn't normally do can help you out as well, because sometimes you get away from the basics and you forget about certain things, because when you get to higher levels of baseball, it gets a little easier, because balls and strikes and outs and safes, when the pitcher's around the strike zone, it's easier to call a game. There's no getting around that. And then when the plays are clean, the ground ball to shortstop, fly balls are being caught, it's quite easy to make those calls, and the game can be quite easy. It's the bobbles. It's when the swipe tags happen, the throws up the line happen. It's when you get too many men on the base. You get runners running into each other. You get obstruction, interference. You can get so much more at the lower levels of baseball. Calling that every once in a while, it might be good to get down to the old grassroots of things and call a game and help out with those kind of games. You'll see a lot more things in a bad baseball game than you will in a good baseball game, right? You'll see a lot more things that will get your that space between your ears thinking a little bit more and using that a little bit more, because it's tough to call those games sometimes, and there's a lot of things that you'll never see in a regular season at all. Like in a college season, the plays are usually pretty good. We had one stinker this year that happened, but in general the game's been really good, and we haven't had many issues per se. There has been some. I'm not going to say we're perfect around here, but there have been some. But going out to a lower level game and calling some games like that, it might help you refresh your mind a little bit and see how things go, and having rules that you might not ever have to call, and that you would normally just brush back to nothing. So it's very important to maybe go out to those lower level games and have that. And this past weekend, I had an old mentor of mine come back out of the woodwork, old Marv Sheen here in Lethbridge, Alberta. Marv's at baseball games all over everywhere, and he came out and he watched the game. And he came down the dressing room after the game, and he was giving me some things that I missed on, that he was laughing about, little odds and ends, little trinkets and triscuits and everything else that I got wrong. The one was just my calling balls, like the count between pitches. My left hand was turned a little bit too much, so maybe the scorekeeper couldn't see. Like, just little nitpicky things. He laughed at it, but he said I was having trouble with an inside pitch on right-handed batters, and I said, "Yeah, Marv, it's just one of those things. I don't know why. I just don't get that pitch for some reason. No, it's inside pitch on left-handed batters, or I don't remember." I said, "Yeah, like I have trouble with that pitch. Always have, always will. I've been working on it. I've been working on different things, and going and having conversation with people, and you're not being decisive, you're not being anything, it doesn't matter." And having young guys come to talk to me afterwards saying that they saw something that I did, that they think, "Well, why do you do that, why do that?" It helps out to umpiring a lot. So making sure to be around the game a little bit more than you thought you would is important too. Yeah, you're around the game enough, you're around the ballpark enough, and you like to be compensated for your time, but going to a game and just watching sometimes, and watching an umpire will help you not only grow as an umpire, might help that umpire as well, and they might come to you, or you might go to them and say, "Okay, why did you do it that way?" So mentorship can go both ways when it comes to umpiring. It's not just the mentor that says something, or the evaluator that says something. Sometimes the mentor and the evaluator might learn something just by watching a game. So going out there and doing a lower level of baseball isn't the worst idea in the world. You might be taking a couple of bucks out of somebody's pocket that would normally do that game, but every once in a while, maybe go and do that game with that person, or volunteer your time or something else, and that person can take that game fee, and going out in the field and doing that can help out not only the umpire, but can help out the team as well. I know Dan, picking on Dan a little bit here today, but Dan, a few weeks back, he coaches the high school team in a small community just east of Lethbridge here where I live, that he was very appreciative, and he said the kids were appreciative of me and Brandon Oberg being out in the field. Like, me and Oberg are the old dogs out around these parts, so we go out and we did the first high school game of the year, and he said the kids were pretty appreciative that we were out there doing that game, and we would help out, and we were part of it, and they thought, "Well, man, these guys are really good umpires, so we should maybe put in a bit better effort today." And to a man, the game wasn't that bad. Like, we expected the worst in high school baseball, because sometimes it can be a little bit dicey in the high school realm with things. But kids appreciate it when guys go out that are our age, and we work hard, and we do our job properly, and they appreciate it, and they put in a good effort. Anyways, we had a little, actually, I got one more thing. Umpires, quit complaining about stuff you can't control. This time of year as well, like, I know it's good, the complacency, where we've been around a lot. You're around these guys a lot already. We talked about that already this podcast, but there's stuff, and I'm guilty of it too. There's something we got to stop doing. It's complaining about the stuff we can't control. There's things about pay, and there's things about getting assignments and getting assigned to this game or that game, or not getting this tournament or that tournament, and complaining about this guy or that guy. Go out and do your job. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. There's some stuff that I, like, behind the scenes, that I can't control, and I got to stop complaining about it too. There's stuff that you go out there and you do the games, and you know what? There's a lot of other stuff going on. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know why they decided to do this. We don't know why this guy got this game. We don't know why that this team pays more than that. We don't know why this league pays more than this league. We have no idea why this guy can't do that many games. We have no idea why that guy can do 1,000 games. Umpires, go out and do your job, because the rest of it's just noise. We have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. So it's very important, and I'm sure it's that way right across North America, where there's people complaining about the exact same things from town to town, and city to city, and state to state, and province to province. So umpires, please quit complaining about the stuff that is out of your control. It doesn't do anybody any good. We don't know the whole story. We pretend we do. We pretend we're the smartest guys on the field, but in general, we're not. We have no idea what the pay rate is. We have no idea what this is happening. So it's very important to go out and control the stuff you can control. Work hard every game. Call the pitches that you're supposed to call the outs you're supposed to call the safes you're supposed to call, and don't worry about that noise when you're on the field. Afterwards, maybe when you're away from the field having a beer afterwards, you can discuss things. Maybe when you're at home, you're on the phone, text chains, whatever, do it then. Try to keep that crap away from the field, because it doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't help the situation, because it gets between your ears before the game. You go out on the field with a negative thought in your head, And it's not a good thing. You should go with a clear mind, clear head, clear soul. Sound like a guru here to Anthony Robbins, power of positive thinking here back in the 90s. But it's true how that can affect your game on a consistent basis. Going out there with less noise between your ears is quite important. So it's one of those things. There's my little rant for the day here at 1420 World Headquarters, home of the Hey Blue podcast, part of the 1420 group of shows. Anyways, to end tonight's show, we had a situation on Sunday that I was not prepared for one bit. My partners Tyler and Brandon were not prepared for it at all either. Like I said, we were out in Vauxhall. The Academy was playing Badlands. No, it was who was playing Great Falls. Electrics were playing the Badlands Academy, the Badlands Badgers. There was a play that kid slid into third base. Throw came from left field, hit the kid right in the face. I saw blood instantly, so I called time, called the trainer over, and before the trainer got out there, the kid was going into convulsions and was having a seizure. It was something that I was not prepared for one bit. I didn't know what to do. I froze, and I flat out had no idea what the next step was going to be. I don't know if any of our listeners to this show have had that situation. If you have, please get back to me like you can see on the thing on the Twitter machine at _1420, or you can email me at 1420sports@gmail.com, or just Facebook reach me out at Brent Radlinski there. But it was a situation I was not prepared for. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I don't think there's really a manual for this. And I just want to know from other umpires and other associations throughout this great land of ours, if you guys have conversations with the different leagues that you umpire, with the different leagues that you umpire, if there is an emergency response plan for things that happen on the field. I don't know if just yelling out loud, call 911 is the proper emergency response plan. In other words, I can almost guarantee you it isn't. I don't know what the solution is to this. If there is inside each league, if there is something that happens, if there are conversations, because in general, as umpires, we just go to the field, we have our bag, we go to our little dressing room, we go on the field, we call the game, we get off the field, in the little dressing room, have a beer, and you go home. And the rest of the stuff that doesn't get brought up at all. I'm the vice president of Southern Alberta Umpire Association, and I know I've never had that conversation with leagues, with coaches, with presidents, and everything else. I just want to know if it's a thing. Because the community we were in, it's about 25 minutes away from the closest hospital, so therefore there wasn't an ambulance on site and everything else, or close by, so an ambulance wasn't readily available. And I didn't know, like, we don't know who's got first aid, we don't know who's got this, who's got that, whether coaches have to have a first aid certificate. For my past career, I know I've had to have first aid, but the first aid certificate that I got was basically not worth anything, because the second because I was forced to take the course, it wasn't something I wanted to take, was for my job requirements. I had to take that course. And basically, when I left the first aid course, I basically forgot everything I learned that morning, let alone what I learned that afternoon or the day before. So I just want to know from umpires out there around this great land of ours, what you guys have for emergency response plan, what you guys do in situations. I'm sure that's not the first time a seizure's happened on the field. Yeah, 2 weeks ago we had a kid blow out his knee on the field, and that's something you can kind of mitigate. And you can, okay, well, let's just hold him here. And it wasn't an emergency per se. Like, to the kid, it was an emergency, obviously, but this on Sunday was an emergency. And if there wasn't a trainer on the bench, I don't know what would have happened, and what would have taken control of that situation, or who would have taken control of the situation. I know it's not my job as an umpire to be a paramedic out there, but I just want to know what the grand master plan is out there on the thousands and thousands of baseball games that happen throughout a day. I saw it was a scary situation. It shook me up a little bit. I was quite surprised. We continued with the game and with the day, but the kids said they wanted to play, so we continued to play. And it was an odd thing to see, and I didn't really know what to do and how to go about doing things. So it was handled well. The kid turned out he's okay. We got the notification halfway through the last game of the day that he was doing okay, and all his vitals were good and everything else. He had a seizure. He went into shock and everything else, and it was an ugly situation that I didn't know how to handle. And when you don't know how to handle things, it gets the mind thinking of you start thinking worst case scenario. So I just want to know from other people out there how you guys handle situations. If there is a league wide rescue response plan, if there is something that you guys got an ERP that goes on that umpires, maybe we should post something in every respective locker room throughout the land. If there's something that we should have on our phones, something that should be shared more, conversation we shared more, because this stuff happens a lot like where the defibrillators are, where the everything. Like you just don't know what's going on, and there's not a lot of communication that happens throughout this stuff. So I just want to know, for everybody out there in baseball land, I want you guys to get back to me on what you guys do in your respective communities when it comes to St. John's ambulance or ambulances or paramedics, or what you have to have on the field, because I think it's a discussion that just gets forgotten about. I'm not saying that player safety is last on anybody's plate, but I think it gets forgotten about because it's so few and far between where something does happen. Like I said, it's something I haven't seen in my 48 years on this planet and my 20 some years of umpiring. I've never seen something like that. So I was, like I said, I was a bit shaken up by the whole scenario, and thank God the kid's all right. But we have to get to a situation where accidents don't just happen, right? We got to plan for the worst case scenario all the time. It's just please get back to me on that topic. Anyways, thank you very much. Got rambling a little bit about that last little topic, but it was something that shook me up, and I just want to get people's thoughts on that. Thank you very much for listening to the Hey Blue podcast. I'm gonna get more of these out throughout the summertime. Starting right now, I'm going to start getting this one out. I'm going to get the ones I've done in the past into one header. Just going to only be out on the Hey Blue label, not the 1420 label, because people just don't combine the two, and I get it. So it'll be out on its own podcast site kind of deal. You'll see. I'll get those out. I'll put them on all the Facebook page, everything else. I'll make complete sense of it, and you guys will get these out on a daily basis. Make sure you sponsor. You go to our sponsor Manscaped and manscaped.com and use promo code 1420escape for all your men's personal grooming needs. It helps the show and everything else, and it'll make you feel great and look great before you go out in the field and get rid of all that unneeded body hair. Shave your faces, people. It's very important to go out in the field looking proper. Anyways, also we have the Hey Blue merchandise page. I'll put that up in the show description as well, so don't be afraid to buy yourself a Hey Blue golf shirt or a Hey Blue undershirt or whatever it may be. There's everything out there. We got barbecue aprons if you want one of those too. So go up. That'll be up in the show description to get your Hey Blue merchandise out there and wear it proudly and on the field. And talk to people about the Hey Blue podcast is very important. If you want to come on the show, let us know. Just reach out. These are quick and easy to do. People get a little bit intimidated, I guess, by being on a podcast. It's just like shooting a shit in someone's basement or shooting a shit in somebody or in a bar or in a dressing room after a game. It's just it's the same thing. We'll get out, we'll talk about baseball and things about that's great about umpiring or not so great about umpiring. So I like to hear different perspectives from around North America about what goes on. So make sure you subscribe to the Hey Blue podcast wherever you get your podcast. It'll be up there today. I'll get that taken care of in the next half an hour and we'll get it out there. Anyways, thank you very much for listening. Have a great weekend umpiring games. I'm going to have a great time in the field this weekend. CCBC championships. Hopefully nobody yells at me too much and I have a good time seeing some umpires I haven't worked with since last year. Be good to see Blaze back here in Lethbridge. It's going to be a lot warmer this year for the CCBC championships. So here it is, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to the Hey Blue podcast, an umpires podcast for umpires by an umpire. And remember, one call's good, two calls are bad. Have a good day, folks. We'll talk to you again next week.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. Oh, it's root for the whole team. They don't win, it's a shame. Now it's 1, 2, 3 strikes. You're out at the old ball game. Now let's root for the whole team. If they don't win, it's a shame. Now it's 1, 2, 3 strikes. You're out at the old ball game. Oh, what a game!
A message from me.
You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar podcast. 4 beer with the sports talking a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.